Hey guys, subscribe for daily content, and if you're shopping for gear, make sure you check out the description for the newest items at some of the very best online retailers. There's also links for some of the items that I personally recommend. Thanks!
What's going on YouTube? Metal Complex here, and today I've got a really special knife overview and presentation to share with you guys. This is the Lesbar Knives Custom Aviator Bifrost. I've had this knife for a while now. And I did the unboxing and I've showed it in various uploads, discussion topics, things like that. But I've never actually done the full overview on this thing, and there's a reason for that. The reason is that this is one of the most impressive, most complicated, and most intimidating custom knives that I have ever handled. I did not want to do this video until I was prepared to talk about everything that goes into it. Now, without actually being the one who made it, right? This is a really special piece. It's also a very expensive piece, and it's not going to be looked at the same way that you would look at, a $40 knife from Walmart. It is completely and totally functional, very capable. But one of the designers is actually a jeweler. So they were 100% intentionally creating functional, beautiful art, functional, beautiful jewelry. So that's exactly what this is, and I want to look at it, with that in mind, and just let you guys know right at the beginning of this video, what this is going to be. When I take a look at custom knives, especially things that are, one-off or made in extremely small groups, right, and really expensive, I do more of an overview. It's not really a review based on functional aspects or carry or anything like that, because I did not carry this knife. I'm not going to pretend that I did. This is a knife that I have just enjoyed as part of my collection. I am a knife collector, knife enthusiast, and stuff like this is really, this is kind of like the peak of this hobby for me, is the existence of stuff like this. This is the type of stuff that I love to add to my personal collection. And it's really interesting, all of the little details about this that are so different from, not just your average pocket knife, but different from what we typically see even at the expensive end of the knife world. Really cool. You can actually check these knives out at Polish Custom Knives. There are quite a few different models, and I don't know everything about all of the models, but I'll let you guys take a look. I'll have Lesbar Knives linked down in the description. It does help my channel when you use those links, but that's up to you. Thanks to my patrons for supporting me. So who is Lesbar Knives? So Lesbar Knives was established in 2018 in Irpin. I know that I'm probably mispronouncing that, so I'm sorry, Ukraine. And that's where they're made, is, as far as I understand, all in-house in Ukraine. So there's two people involved with Lesbar Knives, and where the Lesbar comes from is from, number one, Ole Lesuchevsky, and again, I'm sorry for the mispronunciation, and then Stan Baranovsky. So it's the Les from Lesuchevsky and the Bar from Baranovsky to create that Lesbar Knives. Ole began making knives in 1993, and Stan Bar, it says on the website, you can get more information on Polish Custom Knives on the website if you want the details of this, but he's I think it said he was a third-generation jeweler, and so they became friends and sort of combined their interests and their talents and their appreciation for fine detail and craftsmanship and just like complex execution. And what a match. Holy moly. I mean, this is the end. This is the inevitable end result of that, is you get two people who are extremely good at what they're doing, and the end result is that you get something that's not only hyper impressive, aesthetically, but hyper accurate. And I mean that. I mean, this is one of the most, it might actually be the most perfect execution of a pocket knife that I've ever handled. And they're really flexing with what they did with the machining and everything. Even though it is a machine that's doing a lot of this work, the fact that they have done it so perfectly, this is not something that any two people and a machine can accomplish. You really have to have an in-depth understanding of exactly what it is that you're doing in order for this to come out the other end of the equation, so to speak, right? But anyways, the Aviator project was devoted to aviation at the beginning of the 20th century. I thought it was interesting. They said that the pearl inlay here actually represents, I guess, the stormy skies, and then the pivot represents the propeller of the airplane. I thought that was really, really neat. But we've got some more details here. I want to get a few specs, and then we're going to really look at all the little details here. So the overall length of this guy, it's not a small knife at all. It's coming in at about 8.65, maybe 8.7, almost. Very close to Shirogorov. Yeah, you know what? It's 8.75 inches. And then your blade length is 3.85, and your cutting edge is also very, very close, about 3.8 inches. Yeah. So actually almost identical to like flagship Shirogorov, like the blade to handle ratio. And that's part of, I think, what is creating such a compelling aesthetic here is we have so much blade and we have essentially the same amount of handle. At least that's what I like. I'm gonna weigh it for you guys, but each one of these is gonna be a little bit different because they don't mass produce these. These are not knives that they can just beep, beep, boop on a machine and have it poop out the other end. This is an insanely involved process where each part is made and then it's custom fitted. I mean, even the bearings are individually adjusted to each knife, which is wild. I think that any time that machine elements are talked about in pocket knives, people have this unrealistic idea that it's the same thing as like printing. It's almost like these can simply be 3D printed with no second thought, no extra amount of energy or anything like that. We'll just sort of showcase here exactly what I'm talking about when it comes to the complexity of some of this work with this titanium, which, by the way, is not typical titanium either. We have these beautiful edges that have all been precision machined and anodized in exactly the right place. Even the grooves in between, right on the titanium, these up and down areas actually have little slots in between. I'm gonna zoom up even more here so you guys can see what I'm talking about. I'm trying not to shake the camera. But this has been milled even within. I have never in my life seen a pocket knife with this much complexity, this much accuracy. The inlay work is perfect. This is carbon fiber, by the way, right in here. We have pearl. This is not, to my knowledge, titanium Damascus. Rather, it's almost a bubble or a cushion because it's been radiused of polychrome anodized titanium that's been laid around the pivot. And then around that, we have a line milled into the titanium to highlight this area. A chamfered edge that's been anodized, the blue-purple, that's also been milled. If this were easy to do, we would see it all the time, period. And we do not. You do not see knives like this all the time. I've never seen something this complicated. I mean, this is so unbelievably impressive. Even the lock bar here. Look at all the little teeny tiny details. I love this. This is so cool. It's not actually, it's not something that's going to be to everybody's liking, but I think most people can appreciate the effort here and the design vision. I mean, designing this thing would have been absolutely wild. I'll let you guys take a look at the backspacer here before we pull out of the zoom. There is no part of this knife that was lazily done. This is maximum effort from two people who are not only good at what they do, but it's so important to them that it's executed to the full extent of their vision. I have a lot of respect for knife makers and knife designers who are able to do this, but people who see this through and complete things like this, and they're still like functional, right? Let's weigh it. So we have titanium, carbon fiber. This is actually a little note on the titanium here. I have to make sure that I get the name of it right. That's right. 4Al3MO1V titanium, which is apparently considered stronger than your typical, like your Chinese grade 2 TC4, or which is the equivalent to like a USA grade 5 6Al4V. It's considered stronger. I don't know what the pros and cons are beyond that, but that is the grade of titanium that's used. I've actually never heard of that before, so that's cool. Not the first time I've heard of companies using non-typical titanium in their frames, right? But the first time I've ever heard of that titanium. So the weight on this guy, which again is going to be different for 3.7 ounces. Are you kidding me? That's ridiculous. 3.8 ounces, a sub 4 ounce of this size. It's absolutely wild. I'm going to add to that the balance is right, not just, it's almost right on the pivot. This knife is beautifully balanced. You don't accidentally do that. This is crazy. It's not just intimidating because it's an expensive knife. It's intimidating because I'm trying to comprehend the amount of effort that goes into each individual product. It's so far beyond, right? I think about, how dedicated I was to my own design, which pales in comparison in every way. Obviously, mine's not the same thing at all. But what I'm saying is that I feel like I worked really hard on my own design, but it was nothing. It's literally nothing compared to something like this. This is a complete and total dedication to the craft. I don't want to miss any of the other little details that I had written down here that I wanted to talk about. But the pivot barrel also, which we're going to talk about the action, and let me tell you, it goes without saying that the action is smooth. But if you notice there, move that lock bar out of the way, look at the control. It's not, sorry, you're hearing my stomach growling in the background. The amount of control here, the smoothness of the pivot, it's one thing to have a knife that falls shut. I don't think that's very difficult to accomplish anymore. I think it's wildly rare to have a knife that disengages and falls with this level of control. It's insane. It's like the knife knows not to fall too quickly, as if it's being considerate of your fingers. I've never actually experienced knives like this. People talk about like knives having souls and this and that. Obviously, I know that this is an inanimate object, but it's knives like this that lend some truth to the idea behind that, because this thing feels alive. It doesn't feel completely like an inanimate object. It's like part of them literally lives within this thing, and the action is so unique and so unbelievable. There's not a word that I can use. Smooth is just like a stupid cave person word that I'm using to describe a feeling that is so far beyond that. I don't have the right, the right vocabulary to properly describe what it is that I'm feeling within the pivot there. It's a magical thing. It's something beyond the ether. Access to the lock bar, a little bit of a, kind of a sharp scallop, I guess, but I'd be lying if I said that it was uncomfortable because the lock bar tension, look at this relief cut. Look at the relief cut. I wonder how long they spent designing the relief cut. Wonderful. What a wonderful thing that they've done here just to make sure that it looks good. But the relief cut is so perfect, the appropriate amount of tension so that you can disengage it, but it's still actually locking up completely and totally solid. No detent lash. We've got some jimping up here just a little bit, just enough to catch your finger. Oh, God. Flipping action. I mean, you wouldn't expect anything less than perfect, and it is. Sound is awesome. The break of the detent is awesome. Everything. I have to imagine that every last part of this, all of the functional things and all of the aesthetic things, It feels like they put an equal amount of effort into everything. It wasn't like they dedicated, it's easy to look at this and feel like they dedicated wholly to just the aesthetic. And then the knife parts were secondary. I would argue anybody who picks this up would immediately know that they were just as dedicated to the aesthetic of this knife as they were the functional elements. This is a professional jeweler and a professional knife maker, and they have combined all of their, all of the things that they care about and are passionate about. So it's no surprise that you get the complete package with these. Very few knives that I've handled at this price point really feel fully deserving. I'm always like, we're up here in that territory, so there's a little bit of fog. There's a little bit of fog for about $1,000 to $50. A lot of times it's really hard to put my finger on, where this knife that it feels about the same as this other custom knife, but it's like 1,000 more or 1,500 more. And I'm like, well, sometimes it just comes down to the name or the rarity or the demand of it. This knife feels at least what they asked for it. I mean, this is a $3,400 knife. I've handled a lot of, it sounds crazy, but the truth is I've handled a lot of knives that cost $3,000, $4,000, $5,000, $6,000. And they all feel, I'm always like a little bit like, I wouldn't be able to identify exactly where, this extra 1,000 or this extra 500. This feels like, this feels like a knife that I could easily, again, spend $3,400 on and know exactly what it is that I'm spending that money on, even with a lot of it being embellishment. Absolutely. But I can see the work. I can feel the work. I can feel the care and the passion that went into it, So absolutely. The pivot barrel has a bronze bushing, so that's going to keep the action continuing to function this way for a very, very, very long time. And even after, maybe adjustment is needed down the road, which is totally something you can do. I'm not going to touch this knife with my tools for obvious reasons. But if you want to adjust this, it's simple torques, which I've always made the point. It doesn't have to be proprietary. A lot of companies, a lot of knife makers will do proprietary hardware, number one, to keep people out, and number two, to sort of complement the aesthetic. You can work simple torques into your designs and still make them easy to maintain. And that's what we've got here. We've got simple torques. It's not insanely complicated. It's far from insanely complicated. It's just the aesthetic that's complicated. Taking it apart, maintaining it if you want to, pretty straightforward. I mean, it's a frame lock, right? The detent ball freely rotates in this, which is also part of the reason that the action feels so smooth, which is cool because a lot of, I talked about this just the other day in the comments with somebody else. I said I feel like there are detent balls that are designed to freely spin, but some of them definitely don't. Sometimes they flatten them. There's a bunch of different ways that they can get the detent ball to assist in the smoothness of action. There's a lot of different elements there. I mean, the lock bar tension, where's the relief cut? How thick of it? How thick is the relief cut? How long is the handle, right? Where's the detent ball located in relationship with the blade? I feel like that's pretty minor. The detent ball strength or the size, the depth of it, right? Is it flat? Does it freely rotate? What's the finish on the blade? Usually the surface should be, smooth, but there's so many elements that can affect action. A lot of people, they reduce it to, does it have bearings or washers? And it's so much more than that. And this knife proves it. It's so much more. All of the hardware is titanium. I think probably people could have guessed that. There's a tungsten carbide alloy stop pin, which is cool. That will pretty much ensure that between the blade and the stop pin, there's not going to be much wear between those two areas over a long period of time. Something I thought was really funny is that the lock bar insert, I had to read this twice. The lock bar insert is M390. Why? I have no idea. I feel like that's almost just a flex. Maybe they have a reason for it, right? But like, what a flex. They're not using M390 for the blade. They use it for the lock bar insert. Oh, man. I thought that was amazing. It does double as the over travel stop, right? Blade steel is mirror polished Damasteel, which you should be familiar with by now, but that's the proprietary, RWL34 and PMC27, created by the Damasteel company, the performance blend of Damasteel. This takes a beautiful polish, so when companies want to, they can add, like in this case, a mirror polish to it, which is awesome. They've also mirror polished the edge. Beautiful. I'll let you look at the plunge grind for anybody who cares about that. Seems pretty trivial on something like this, but there it is. Beautiful. The edge is insane. The edge is insane. In fact, you know what? I'll cut it's not the first time. I've cut a piece of paper with it just to feel it. Oh my gosh. the ease. Like this feeling is so incredible. It's just beautiful. Honestly, I could sit here and do this all day. It's beautiful. Sorry, I cut that one in a bad spot. I was trying to continue to angle the blade to see how easily it would simply push cut into it. But that is a beautiful, beautiful edge. All done by hand. A lot of elements of this knife are done by machine, but a lot of the inlay stuff and the little, individual pieces, there's a lot of hand elements there. Hand fitting, setting, tuning, all of those things. They're not knives where the pieces can just be like boop, 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 and then they just screw them together and everything's always perfect. No, there's a lot of little tiny details, little tiny things that they do that are very, very hands-on after they make the parts that allow these to truly stand out, not just visually, but in terms of feeling. All of those things have to be completed in order for the knife to be truly complete. And that's special. That's what makes these special. It's also part of what makes these so expensive. It's not just the materials. It's not just the complexity of the machining, right? It's certainly not the size of the thing. It's all of those little tiny details. It's the effort and the time that goes into making sure that each of their individual products is perfection by their own standards. And I mean it. If you pick one of these up, it's going to be apparent right away. That was the first thing that I noticed. I was like, this is impossibly perfect. Impossibly perfect. This is the type of thing that people, which, even here on my channel, people who regularly spend thousands of dollars on pocket knives, not a very common type of person. But if you're going to be that type of person, after you've done it a few times, you know what you expect, right? And chances are you've probably bought something that felt like less than what you paid for by quite a bit. I know I have. I've bought multi-$1,000 pocket knives that feel like they're thousands overpriced. And that experience comes from buying and comparing to other things within the same general neighborhood. I have never purchased anything more or less than this that holds a candle to this knife. I've experienced some incredible things, right? Some amazing, amazing cutlery. And I've paid more. I've paid more for knives that are different in terms of design and execution, that are not nearly as complicated and are impressive, or maybe cost the same or more for slightly different reasons, right? I have never purchased anything that feels so perfectly crafted versus this. This is the most, it feels like the most accurately priced, ultra expensive custom knife that I've ever experienced. I know I'm saying the same thing over and over again. But I want to make sure and do this justice. This was intimidating to review. I don't feel like I'm, I would ever truly be ready to present this knife to my community, because no matter how much I try to absorb all the little features and, properly express how this makes you feel during operation and what it's like holding this, I can't properly do it. It is, at the end of the day, it's still one of those things that you kind of have to experience. And then you go, oh, I get it. I understand why he's having so much trouble, why he was so afraid to, finally make the video on this thing. It is absolutely exquisite. Absolutely. Of course it's centered, but look at that. It's almost like this part of the backspacer is nested in. There's like a separate part of the back. We're going to have to zoom up so I can actually show you guys what I'm talking about. The backspacer itself has an insert, and then the tip of the pocket knife is centered not only on the first part of the backspacer, but on the insert of the backspacer. They're just showing off, which they should. They should. So amazing. It's so amazing. This won't be the last one of these that I own. I love this. This is the type of knife that I get out and just look at and enjoy. Now, some people are not going to like this. I honestly think it's super, super cool. You have the designer's names there, and it says custom knives, and I think that's actually been milled into the blade. Maybe not. Maybe it's been lasered. But I kind of like that you can't, it's really hard to see until you turn it just right. Just like that. Beautiful. Absolutely beautiful. How does it actually feel ergonomically? I mean, I can feel all the texturing, right? The edges and the chamfering, but all of those lines have been so beautifully knocked down. They didn't just machine it and anodize it and call it good. They still wanted to make a knife that was comfortable. The choke up spot, like if they decided to make this exact knife, but make it way less and that wouldn't be their style. This is clearly like what they want to do. But if they made this like just one comfortable piece of contoured titanium, oh yeah, the design is extremely functional. It's very much a knife design. It's actually a fairly simple handle and blade profile, which goes right along with a lot of what I've always said. You can take a classic knife blade profile and handle profile, and you can make it special with your own, design complexity, your own design language, right? I feel it would be very interesting to find out how much of this feels like, the jeweler's elements, right? You have the knife designer who still definitely had a hand in where to place certain things. But I want to know how much of each area was Ole, and I don't want to get their names wrong. It just feels insulting. And how much was Stan? In which area, who had what say over what area, or what influence they had over what area, right? We can look at this area here and say that the pearl that goes over this whole area right here is absolutely wild. It goes, if there's inlaid pearl into this area goes over, sort of cascades over onto this piece of carbon fiber, which is also laid in, chamfered on either side. It's this raised area, laid perfectly into this tapering, curved line. It's so hard to even, I'm running into a challenge of using the right words to describe exactly what I'm looking at. It's spectacular. Every sense of the word is spectacular. Still manages to look aviation inspired without looking awkward or weird, Like if you were to say we design knives that look like airplanes. We've heard that before. Sometimes those look a little funny, and sometimes they don't, right? But that's in my mind. I'd be like, how did you make that look like an airplane? It creates an awkward image in my head. But if somebody were to lay this down in front of me, I'd be like, oh, okay, now I understand exactly what you mean. This is gorgeous. They even offered I kind of glossed over the fact that this beautiful area of the knife is actually a lanyard loop. It was hard for me to even remember the function of things like this, because it's so awesome to look at. Gorgeous. How would this perform as a user? Probably just fine, right? I mean, it's a flat ground blade, fairly thin behind the edge, reasonably comfortable. But this is designed for people who appreciate the art that goes into knives of this caliber, the effort that goes into it, people who like the jewelry element in their extremely expensive custom knives. People who like to collect, right? They know exactly what percentage of the knife world they are serving. And the people who are interested in stuff like this know exactly what it is that they're buying. In this case, you're getting a really, really good example of you're getting exactly what you're paying for. Honestly, at $3,400, I can't believe I'm saying this, but at $3,400, this feels like a steal. It feels like they are over-serving the people who are buying their knives. I think that this is incredible. This is some of the most amazing stuff that I've ever experienced. So I don't know that I have any additional details to share with you. That's really, I think I've covered it. I really just wanted to do this knife justice and give everybody some time to really look this over and appreciate, every element of beauty, right? Whether this is your cup of tea or not, it's amazing. That's going to be it today, guys. This is a fun one. I don't get to do these as much anymore, but it's always awesome to have a chance to do this. So this is a very prized knife in my collection, and it will not be the last time that I buy something from Lesbar Knives. So anyways, make sure that you check them out on Polish Custom Knives. That's going to be it today. Please make sure to follow me on Instagram at metal_complex. If you enjoyed this video, leave a like. If you'd like to check out my other content, I do, of course, have lots of videos of knives that are either expensive or inexpensive that I do or don't like, so check those out. And if you enjoy all my content, go ahead and click on that Metal Complex logo right there and subscribe, because there's definitely more coming. Thanks again for watching, everybody, and have a great day.